what I'd like to do just for 5 minutes, and then unless you got more questions, what I'd like
Okay.
to do is do a little quick training for those of you who are, um, who are open to go talk to a restaurant owner or call a restaurant owner. Okay, that what we found since I've been in this, that is the hardest thing to do is to get to the restaurant owner. A lot of people want to get flyers and drop it off. It don't work. I'm just telling you. It just if you drop flyers, you may get a hit, maybe one out of maybe 20, 30 restaurant, maybe. But the people you leave it with, it has no effect on their paycheck. So the general managers, yeah, I'll give it to them, and it might end up in the trash. So what I suggest that you do, if you're just local in your neighborhood where you go to eat, right? Do a little research. First of all, go to Chat GPT or Google the name of the restaurant and ask it who is the owner of the restaurant. So get the owner's name, because and then once you have the owner's name, then now you can pick up the phone. Because what a lot of people will do is they'll they'll pick up the phone and call the restaurant and they'll say, "Is the owner in?" And what that tells the person on the phone is that you're some type of salesperson, and that's like the gatekeeper, and they'll just blow you off. But if you've done your research and you said, "Hey, Roger Johnson is the owner of this restaurant," so what you do is you call up the restaurant and say, "Hey, I haven't talked to Roger in a while. I'm just checking. I might drop by sometime. When is the best time to catch Roger in the restaurant? Is he here in the mornings, the afternoons, evenings? It's been quite a while." And then most likely they're going to say, "Oh, he usually comes in at 2 o'clock, or he comes in the morning, or we hardly see him, and he's hard to catch." But if you do, so you're kind of doing some fishing. You're kind of cheating a little bit, but that's okay. Because the main thing that you want to do is if you find out, then you go just when you find out when he's going to be there, then you just go show up. Just go show up, and when you show up, say, "Hey, I was just in the neighborhood. I'm doing a little survey to see if you guys have gotten the FICA tips tax. Is Roger in, or is Roger in first?" And say, "Hey, we're doing a survey to see if if you got the FICA tips tax." And they're most likely they're going to say no unless they got a super great CPA. And then he said, "Hey, do you know much about it?" Now, I use word association. And so everybody has heard about the big beautiful bill. And so what I'll say is, "Well, you've heard of the big beautiful bill, right?" They'll say, "Yeah." I said, "Well, there's some enhancements in the big beautiful bill that brought the FICA tips tax to the forefront, because before it was buried in about 8 to 10,000 tax credit refund." I always use the word refund. By the way, I don't say credits. I say FICA tips refund program, because everybody likes a refund. If you say FICA tips tax credit, then they think it's some type of tax thing, and they're going to come right back on you and say, "Oh, my CPA probably got that already." So just a quick tip for your group, for you guys, you just use what I'm telling you, and I think you guys will get a lot better traction. So, okay, now you got his attention. Yeah, when you tell him, "Look, you may have some money sitting on the table that's yours that you don't know about." And to really break the ice after that, you ask him, if it's a man, "Hey, have you ever put on a pair of pants that you haven't worn in a while, and you reached in the pocket and you feel something in there, and you pull out a $20 bill or a $50 bill? Don't you get happy?" And they're going to smile and start laughing, because everybody can relate to that. If it's a female owner, have you put on a blouse with some pockets, or a jacket with some pockets in it, and $20 bill, you found a $20 bill? We can all relate to that. And so that being the case, they're going to start laughing and say, "Hey, basically that's what's called found money." Okay. And so this is what we do, and that's why we're taking this survey to see if there's some found money out there. We work with a tax attorney. He's the CPA as well, but we work with a tax attorney, and that's all he does is these type of programs. That way you're differentiating yourself from, probably try not to use the word CPA. Tax attorney, leverage Stefan's credibility and his credentials. Because as soon as you say we use the CPA, he's going to think, oh, I got a CPA. Let me talk to my CPA. Even though this CPA is not going to know how to do it. And you leverage that. Our tax attorney has been doing these for his own clients since 2003. He is an expert at not just this. There are other found money programs that also might, maybe sitting there that it might even be more money for you. So basically, you know what? I can calculate your refund. Can you give me 5 minutes? And I'm just going to ask you three questions, and let's see how much money you got sitting on the table. Now, for you guys that just got that right, you need to have your link set in your notes on your cell phone. And if you're not, if you're an older person like me, it took me a while to figure all this stuff out, right? I was like, I didn't even know anything about notes. Now everything that I have goes into my notes with a title on it. But if you're not even there, because some people are not, just make a star and put the link in your email, or and then put a star next to it, so it's called stars, so you can come back to it, and then just click the link right there, and then it's going to pull up. When it pulls up, scroll down to the section where it's going to say, I just got three questions to ask you, Roger. Roger, how many tipped employees do you have here at this restaurant? And he's going to give you the answer. And then the next thing is, well, the way the credit was written, the national minimum is it's showing 213 here, which could be, but most of the states we're seeing is $5.15. So let me type that in, 515. And the next question is, how many hours do they work? Or excuse me. The next question you want to ask them, for your tipped employees, how much in tips do you think that they're making on average? Because I know some people make more, some people make less. What's the average that you think that the waiters and the bar staff makes here at your restaurant every week? It could be 400, 500, 600. Whatever you come up with. Say it doesn't have to be exact. Just give me a number, and because we're gonna, if you would like to take take the next step and find out how to get this, then we'll go over the real numbers with the tax attorney. So you put that number in. Doesn't matter how many hours per week, and then as soon as you put that number in on your cell phone, take your cell phone and do like that. Turn it around and put it in his face and say, whatever that number is, this is your number. This is the money that your payroll company has been sending to the IRS because they don't want to go through all the compliance and legalities of splitting up the tip portion of your every time a client comes in and they pay their bill, they just they lump together the 7.65% that you're paying for FICA. You know what FICA is, right? Yeah. If you don't know and you're new to this and you've seen FICA but you never knew what it is, FICA is your Social Security and your Medicare that they take out of everybody's check. So the 7.65, they take that, the payroll companies, and they send it to the IRS. Boom. So he'll understand that. So he said, so basically after that, you want to tell him, say it's $50,000. He's like, great. Hey, that's 50,000 you didn't know about. And he's going to smile. And you say, but you know what? It gets better. Because the way that Congress wrote the legislation, because you want to make sure they understand there's a lot of scams out there. So you want to make sure they understand this is a government program. This is a credit
Uncle Dan, you're froze at government program, and now your mic is muted. That's okay. We can pick back up. There we go. If you will, start at government program again, and I'll edit this later.
Okay. So this is talking to the restaurant owner again. The way that the Congress wrote the legislation, this program, you can go back to 2022, 23, and 24. So if we're showing on this calculator that 50,000 is just for 2025, then really, if you take add another 3 years to that, that's $200,000 that you have sitting there that you had no idea about. And would it help you a bit if you can get an extra 200 grand sitting in your account? He's going to laugh, of course, and just go along with it. And then say this. You remember? Then say this. Remember, I told you we work with a tax attorney, right? All he does is stuff like this. Well, there was a lawsuit that was filed. Hey, Roger, do you remember ERC? You got your ERC, right? And 90% of the time he's going to say, yeah. Well, remember in ERC they had these deadlines, right? So you had a deadline to file your 2020, and then there was also a deadline to file 2021. Well, a couple people didn't make the deadline and they got pissed and they actually filed a lawsuit against the IRS. And what they did is they used the laws. And the law says that if there is a natural catastrophe disaster, it's illegal to set any deadlines on that. So they actually won in court twice. They won the first case, then IRS tried to appeal. They lost that. I mean, the consumer won that. The IRS lost the first case, and then they lost the first appeal. They doubt very seriously if they're going to go any further. So that being said, we're also going to go after 2019, 2020, and 2021. So guess what? I just showed you 200,000 was for 4 years. So if we get the other 3 years, which is probably going to take longer to get than the first four, so now we got 200. Now let's add another 150,000. Would you be upset, Roger, if you got an additional 350,000 from the government this year? And then you just be quiet. Don't say anything. Stop right there. Keep it real simple. And most likely, the first one who speaks is the one that loses because silence is golden in sales. So you just don't say a word. And I'll tell you what he's going to say. He's going to say, well, what do I have to do? He said, and then you say, you know what? You just have to answer about 5, 6 questions. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a tax attorney. All we want to do now is give the tax attorney some basic information. Then you go to those questions and you have answer. Yeah, it'll take, a minute. Let me just ask you a few questions. You go through each question, and once you finish, that's when you scroll back up to the top of the landing page, right? You never start there. When you first come on, you go directly to the calculator. Then after the calculator, scroll down, and then you just ask the questions. And what's going to happen is, when you complete these, once we hit submit, it's going to go to the tax attorney's calendar, and we're going to book a meeting with him where you can ask additional questions. He's going to ask you questions. He is very good, and he's also a pretty cool guy because a lot of these financial experts can be kind of dry sometimes, but he's a really good guy, and he's been in this industry. He has the fourth largest tax resolution company in the United States. And if you want to look them up, I'll give you the link to Legacy Tax Resolution. They're in Phoenix, Arizona. I'll give you the link to that. You can want to look them up on your own. That's fine. But how's that? Does that feel like okay? How do you feel about moving forward and doing that? He's gonna say yeah. Always use that term. How do you feel about moving forward? If he says what I need to do, that's one way to do it. If you have to come back and say if he's giving you, I don't. How do you feel about moving forward? Most of the time, it'll be okay. Let's move forward. That's a closing statement. So pretty much that's it. You book the appointment, and then the one thing once you book the appointment, remember it's on a Zoom calendar. Remember that they're gonna ask for his email address. Make sure that you put your email address on there as a guest. It'll have a guest section. So you add your email and ask him, is there anybody else you want to add to this Zoom? Put their email in there. Just scroll down and submit, and it will be booked on Stefan's calendar, and you're good to go. That's it.